where, like, if you're looking at DeAnthony Melton, the Kings do have their mid-level exception, right? So, like, look, if you have this moment where you've got to go to Malik Monk and you have to do, I think the thing that the Kings are like, I think they'll do just about anything to keep Malik Monk.
I agree.
But I also don't know that they want to say, hey, Malik, we'll make you the starting shooting guard.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just tough. Defensively, it's tough, right? You'd rather have somebody who is more of a space holder and a defensive minded guy, a 3-and-D guy, like a Keon Ellis or something, if you're going to have a guy like Monk, right? So you can kind of balance the situation. But if you do give Monk that starting job, you still need a Malik Monk off the bench. And that's where I look at Melton and go, okay, like what would it cost to get him as well?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you bolster your backcourt. You can do whatever you want with like some of the other pieces you have. But I think he would look really nice next to Keon Ellis off the bench. I think that clearly, if you're going to do that, you'd want to move on from either or Chris Duarte and Kevin Herter. So you kind of
probably Davion at that point too.
Yeah, maybe Davion. You also have the problem that would make your backcourt really small, and you probably need to bring in someone bigger, like just to have like bigger depth there.
Yeah.
But like, why not? Because if Monk is gonna be a starter, which I don't know if he is or not, you still need that fireball off the bench.
Definitely.
And there's a way to stagger your rotations and stuff where you have him on the court a lot, but at the same time, like the Kings need. We learned during this last 10 games of the season in the playoff and the play-ins that they needed a secondary playmaker, and without Monk, when Monk goes down, if there's an injury to Monk or an injury to Fox, you don't have enough playmakers.
Nope.
And that's why we talk about a guy like Brandon Ingram, and it's why I would say, like, on paper, a guy like Brandon Ingram and his 5.9 assists per game is more appealing to me than a guy like why am I Nets? Mikal Bridges.
Oh,
I love Mikal Bridges as a defensive minded guy. I love him as a 3-and-D, like the elite 3-and-D wing in the game. But I also appreciate the fact that Brandon Ingram can go get a bucket for himself at will.
Yes.
And he can also create for others, because that's something that the Kings just lost. Like when Monk went down, it's like De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, or bust. There's nothing else you're going to get. And it's not a knock on Davion Mitchell. It's just that's not his game, really.
Yeah.
He made some nice passes. He did some things that were like unexpected. But there wasn't 5 or 6 of those a game, which is what Malik Monk does.
Yeah.
And so when you lose that, the fact that your 2 forwards and Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray aren't assist guys, you really get down to like this limited offense, this really limited. And as much as the Kings offense numbers dipped, a lot of it is because of that. A lot of it is because you no longer had to sit there and rush out to Kevin Herter on a 3-point shot, which if you rush out to Kevin Herter on his 3-point shot, he can go around that, attack the rim, either make a play for somebody else or make a play for himself.
Sure.
Well, that it like changes the dynamic. All of these pieces change the dynamic of the roster and how successful your offense can be. It's not just like one reason why the Kings offense didn't look the same or one reason why their defense improved. It's a multitude of reasons, but sometimes there can be like pivot points that really cost you.
Yeah, and I think that was Kenny yesterday when he came in for the handoff, which is coming up in about an hour right here on ESPN 1320. I believe D'Lo will be in today. But Kenny yesterday, because we were talking about the Kings defense and how they've needed to improve on defense, and how Mike Brown last year said they can get worse on offense, but if they improve on defense, then it's fine. And Kenny's argument, and I tend to agree with him, was like, no, you still need offense, because at the baseline of what the sport is putting the ball in the hoop, and preventing teams from putting the ball in the hoop is great, but at some point you need to make a shot. And the Kings don't, and we've been so focused on 3-and-D wings and defensive minded guys, and 6'8" and bigger, these big bodied guys. We look at the Pelicans as the example, right? Shot creation cannot go by the wayside here, they need, and that's why Brandon Ingram is so appealing to me, and to a little bit lesser extent, Kyle Kuzma,
Mm-hmm.
because they will. Yeah, you have to play. The Kings have an offense that they run for sure, but dude, in the final 3 minutes of a game, when it's tied, like getting into your offense is not always going to be available, especially during a 7-game series. Like at some point, you just need to give the ball to a guy and say, "Hey, we've got nothing going right now."
Mm-hmm.
You'd rather have De'Aaron Fox and Brandon Ingram taking those shots than and Keegan Murray, and if Malik Monk is around, Malik Monk, that's great. That's an awesome like group of guys to have at the end of games. But you would so much rather that than like, hey, maybe work for a open 3 to Trey Lyles. Hey, let's kick it out. There's Keon out on the wing. Let's kick it out to him. Like, yeah, okay, those guys can knock down a shot, but do you want, with your season on the line, do you want Trey Lyles taking that shot, or do you want it to be De'Aaron Fox or Malik Monk or a player like Brandon Ingram?
Yeah.
That's kind of what, and I again, not trying to overlook the defensive aspect of this, because I think the reason the Kings were really in it down the stretch and not completely falling apart is because they played so good defensively.
Yes.
But at the same time, that can't be it. It can't be, yeah, hey, they're going to be this awesome defensive team. You see with the Timberwolves right now. The Timberwolves are having a really, really hard time with just Anthony Edwards as their primary shot creator, finding ways to score late in these games. Okay, you can have the best defense of the past decade or the century or whatever people were saying about the Timberwolves. Yeah, well, that's great. But when it's crunch time, can you make a shot?
Yeah. I was watching the Pacers series with the Celtics, and I thought they brought up a really interesting point on the telecast, that the Pacers are a concept offense, right? And so are the Kings. Like, it's a free flowing concept offense. Like, there's some basic rules and some basic concepts, and you play within those confines, right? And then you have the Celtics, which are like an isolation team. Like, everybody just gets the ball and it's ISO time, and they take turns. There's a whole bunch of them that do the same thing, and then those ISO guys find guys for the spray three, and there's always somebody wide open. So concept offense versus what we've seen from some of the other teams, right? But within a concept offense, you need a concept breaker. And that's, I think, what Pascal Siakam is for the Pacers on occasion.
Yep.
But it's also what Malik Monk can be for the Kings. And if you look at like the early 2000 Kings, like Bobby Jackson was that was a concept offense. It was brilliant. The Princeton offense was brilliant, just gorgeous basketball. And then you have Bobby Jackson, who's a concept breaker. And he just plays outside of the concept, and he can play within the concept, but he also plays outside of the concept.
Yes.
The Kings could use another concept breaker, because De'Aaron Fox can be that, but it's also a De'Aaron Fox-centric offense that's built around a concept, right? If you had another guy like Brandon Ingram that could create that way, that could like put the concept away and like, okay, it's time for me to go get a bucket. That would really help this team take that next step, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And again, not trying to say that defense doesn't matter, because it does.
Yeah.
What Keon Ellis brought on that end of the floor, and what De'Aaron Fox did defensively, and what DPOY vote getter Sabonis did defensively, like that stuff matters, and playing with that level of intensity on that end matters. Keegan Murray is the name I left out for what the Kings were doing defensively. His leap on that end of the floor last year was tremendous as well. But like, all that is great, but I still think that they need more wing depth for sure. Like that, every problem we talked about with the Kings this year came back to like, hey, they need more guys who can play like the 3 and 4. They don't have a ton of options there.
They need more length and athleticism at every position.
Yeah, Kyle. Like that's just flat out. Like that's the baseline of what the Kings need. But to Kenny's point yesterday, you can't just add guys where you're going, yeah, hey, we think he can make 36% of his corner threes, 38% of his corner threes, whatever. Like, okay, great. You have another Trey Lyles and a guy maybe who jumps a little higher.
Okay, yeah, but if you had a guy like that who played elite defense, then I think it's different.
Well, yeah, it's helpful for sure. But late in a game, like I just said with Minnesota, late in a game, if it's, hey, De'Aaron, take it and please, that's not going to work for a 4-series playoff run.
Yeah.
And that's why, so with all due respect to the need for length and athleticism and size and defense with yes, 1,000%. But I don't think that the value of an additional shot creator can get overlooked.
No, I totally agree with that, but I would also tell you that finishing a season as a number 1 rated offense means absolutely nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah.
If it doesn't translate to wins, if it doesn't translate to wins in the playoffs, it doesn't mean
No.
anything, and so that's where I get that you need to have this offense rolling, and that I expected this offense to not only be the same as it was last year, but then to add new wrinkles to it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what we all expected, but I also think no one expected that offense to be that good the first year. That was the first year of the offense, so you thought there could only be growth, and the
Mm-hmm.
fact is that's not the way it went. There wasn't the players some of the players regressed.
Mm-hmm.
That just happened.
But I'm not trying to make them the number 1 rated offense.
Yeah.
I'm trying to avoid them being in the position the Timberwolves are in late in these games
Yes.
where, God love Naz Reid is 6th man of the year, but that's probably not the player you want taking your last shot.
Yeah.
No,
No,
Kyle
I get you.
Anderson or whoever, like having that additional shot creator is just a big deal. And that's not, again, this is not even about they need a better offensive rating. That's not the case at all. It's just when you're going to make these improvements, if you want to pull out an additional 4 or 5 wins, I think they really would have benefited in some of these games from a Brandon Ingram type of player instead of Harrison Barnes, a player who you can get the ball to and they're going to create and they're going to play make and they're going to score and they're going to get to their spots and they're going to rise up and there's not a lot of guys who can defend them. Or Harrison Barnes, who's going to catch it and then dribble and then kick it back out to the top of the key so they can try and run their offense again.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Like, look, you've got to have both, right? This team needs to improve defensively, and they need to get back to who they were offensively.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean
Yes.
that's clear, but even like again, I've brought this up, but Kevin Herter I thought was really in his his postseason conversation.
Mm-hmm.
He said that he had worked so hard on the things that he was supposed to do within the concepts of the offense
Mm-hmm.
that he got away from who he was as a basketball player. And then when other teams took that away from him, he didn't have a counter. And he thought it took him out of his game. And clearly, sure, I buy it like 100%. But you do have to have like other players that can step up in those roles in order. Like there's a counterpunch that the team has to have, not just Kevin.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that this team became very limited very quickly on the offensive end. And that's like teams took away the big sweeping 3-point shot by Kevin Herter, and Kevin didn't hit it.
Yeah.
And so
that was the other problem.
and the other thing is Keegan Murray didn't hit it either the first half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, really hurt your ability to like have this top tier offense. And we can also look at offensive rating, defensive rating. They're cumulative throughout an 82 game season.
Yeah.
If you go the first 35 games and your 2 best 3-point shooters aren't hitting their 3-point shots, it's really tough to recover by the end of the season.
Sure.
Because those things, again, it's cumulative. It's going to add up that there's no way for you to recover and be that team.
You just need to have, it's about, to me, having counter punches to that. You cannot be a team. You're not going to win a title as a team who, regardless of who the players are, if your title hopes are completely resting on, well, hope our guys make their threes tonight, you're not going to win. There's just that's
unless they make them all.
Right. Right. But realistically, that's not going to happen. You need that to happen 4 nights out of 7, 4 times.
And I'll even say this, the Indiana Pacers on almost every single one of their games, they still hit a ton of shots.
Yes.
It didn't matter. They got beat by a better defensive team.
It's now shooting matters. It's can you get a stop when you need one? And hey, when the shot isn't falling, where does your offense go? Who do you go to? And that's why I think a player like Brandon Ingram is such a big deal.
Yep.
Because you still need Keegan Murray to hit his threes. And if Kevin Herter's still around, or if it's somebody else, or if it's Keon Ellis or whoever, you still need them to knock down their shots. Trey Lyles for sure. But hey, when the going gets tough, offense not working, team's 0 for 9 from 3, need a bucket to stop a run. That's where That's where that shot creation is valuable.